Hello, everybody. Welcome to Montessori Lives. These two conversations with experienced Montessorians. And tonight we're very privileged to have longtime Montessori parents, Peter and Zambia Brakatselos.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Welcome. So let's start with your Montessori story. How did you discover Montessori?
Actually, it happened, I could say by default, but not really, because I was looking for something different. So if you compare my personality to Peter's, we're both very strong-natured, but we learn very differently. And being exposed to mainstream schooling, private and public, I just found that it wasn't fitting into what I wanted for our children. So, I said to Peter, I want school to be fun. I didn't want it to be that big school bag and the big uniform and the big lunchbox and the big everything and you march and you walk in a gate. And I just wanted them to learn with a smile on their face. And that became a difficult task. And I think it was actually Marie Rose's godmother, who was studying early childhood at the time. She actually didn't know much about Montessori. She just knew the name and she knew that it was something cool. She actually thought it was an American system. And I said, well, how's it different? She goes, I don't know much about it. We were talking about it in class, but it's all about the child-centric. And I went, okay. So I went and researched it and realized there wasn't many options in Australia.
This is 2003,
So this is
2003.
Yeah,
Earlier. Because Alexi went to school. This is around 1999, year 2000, right? So our first born, was 1996, Alexi. So he was coming up. He didn't start at 3. So it was around 2000.
He's a bit older because I just couldn't find a school close to us. And it just so happened there was a school literally around the corner that was a primary school from stage 1 to stage 3. So he went to daycare for about 2 months, and the teacher there literally looked at me and said, your son should be able to write his name. He should be able to do the most basic of things. That is not fair what you're doing to him. And I went, well, I just wanted him to have a good time.
Red flag.
So that was a red flag. I thought, I don't want my children to be exposed to that kind of pressure. They're too little. Just let them enjoy learning. So we found Montessori. I walked in there and I loved the fact that every child function in their own space autonomously. There was no rules. There was no teacher standing at the front on a board. There was none of that. There wasn't time. Every child did what they wanted. And I think at the time, the teacher called it controlled chaos. And I saw a lot of young little faces just loving being young and learning. And going from one activity to the other, and the excitement was there, and the enthusiasm was there, and they had the freedom to go to the bathroom, they had the freedom to go and grab a snack. And I thought, well, that's what life should be. You shouldn't be a little soldier, especially at that age, your personalities are being formed. So
that was the observation.
That was my observation. And I said to Peter, come, because it's really hard to explain what it is that I saw. So we went and just sat in and just watched the way the educators were loving what they did. I saw teachers that enjoyed their job. I saw a teacher down on her knees and giggling with a student. I saw the students say, yeah, but what if I do that? Can I do this? Questions when they were little. They were asking questions.
3 to 6-year-olds.
So the freedom of expression and learning, it was there, and I saw it and I thought, how fantastic. And it so worked out well for our first son, our son Alexi, because he was dyslexic. So imagine putting him in a mainstream school. And we actually went and got him assessed before he started Montessori. And the lady there said to me, what do you want him to become? A rocket scientist? He can't even read, he's little. And I said, yeah, I understand that, but he's able to write his name backwards and mirrored. And I didn't even know he knew how to write his name. Wow. So Peter had brought a whiteboard from work, and I gave it to him with a little pencil and, just to doodle. I thought I was going to draw. And he wrote his name backwards and mirrored. And I said to him, who taught you that, Alex? He goes, no, that's how my name looks. That is how my name looks. He actually used that word.
Mhm.
So I wasn't alarmed. I just knew that Alexa would suffer in mainstream education. So I had family that were exposed to private schooling, and the competitiveness was there, and I didn't want that for them. Not so young. I wanted them, their personality to be developed naturally. We wanted to nurture that. And whatever comes from that is who they become. And again, we would, champion that, which is what happened. And I was lucky enough that, Peter got involved early behind the scenes. So I was very much focused. I was lucky I didn't have to work as well. So it makes it a bit difficult when you've got, mothers at work and there's the time stricken, because stage 1 obviously finishes at 12. So there was some luck on our side, but that's how we sort of fell into Montessori.
But after that first,
what did you
I can just amplify. After that first observation, when I sat and we sat across each other in the stage 1 planned environment for Zoe, I looked at Zam within 15 minutes. I said, we're in. And I came from a public school background in the 80s or 70s and 80s, and 60s and 70s. And this is exactly what we wanted, because I thought no matter the private system or the public system was bankrupt educationally. And we wanted something that was 21st century, that was aligned to a child learning on its own terms, in its own time frame, and getting away from the structure of classes and division and competition, between who can and who can't. So we were all in from day one, and then us as parents had to learn what does it look like to be a Montessori parent to support our first child, and then Mary Rose, who came along and started later.
So it's quite unique.
And you have 3 together, right? You have 3 children?
2.
Sometimes
2.
it feels
2.
like 4. Montessori
and Peter, what were you doing professionally back then? And are you still doing the same thing?
Yeah, I've got a background. I after high school, I went in, did a computing science degree. I've always been in the IT profession. At that time, when the kids were getting, when Alexa was born, I had a very senior role. So I was doing a lot of corporate, for some traveling and pretty much high intensity, high stress. But Zam was the backbone of our family. But as far as the schooling's concerned, I took
every morning tea, every harmony day, every dad day at school. I don't think Dad missed one.
I was going to be there, and I actually took an active role as because the kids went to Riverwood Southside in Sydney for the stage 1, and then we moved to Gomea. But more importantly, I got involved at governance level on the councils and the boards, and was participating in Montessori on behalf of the schools and the movement to try and bring my passion to the kids' schools, so they knew Dad was all in and Mum was all in on a day-to-day basis.
I think the beauty with being a Montessori parent is that you actually can be part of the teaching as well. Because unlike mainstream school, I'm not an educator. I cannot teach you how to do basic stuff, but I can follow through the Montessori method at home, because learning didn't finish in the classroom. It also finished at home. So I was inquisitive in the process and how it all worked. And I was lucky enough to have teachers that were quite willing to give their time. And this is what I mean, they love their work. So I would sit there at the gate and say, oh, Netta, what is it that you do that I cannot do?
Undo.
And that's a problem. See, Montessori, I always say, and I'll say to my dying day, every child is for Montessori. Not every parent is.
Correct.
And that's the biggest issue that I saw, because you had the gate parents that were like, we love Montessori, and there's always a but I want to change this, I want to do that. And there's tug of war. So whatever the teachers are doing at school, the parents will sort of undo it at home. And the only thing that I suppose, worked to my favor is that I'm stubborn. I am stubborn. So I wasn't going to undo the good work that the teachers did.
Yeah, trust.
So my observation was very early in the day, if you can do it once, you can do it forever. Very simple. So if you learn how to tie your shoelaces, then you're going to be doing your shoelaces forever. You know how to, choose your clothes. You'll do that forever. I'm not going to do it for you because, well, you don't feel like it today. It didn't work like that. So there was no ambiguity.
How did that feel to you, Marie Rose? Did it occur to you and when that you'd struck gold with these parents? Or did it feel like you're being like
I never felt it in a negative way because my mum always explained why she was doing it. So I was never confused or restricted. Like, I don't think my mom's made my bed since, honestly, 3 years old. No. My mom has not touched my bed since I was 3 years old. I've never had someone else brush my teeth since I was probably like 4. Like, a lot of basic everyday routine. Like, I've never left my house without making my bed because that was routine. That was just basic everyday things that you did. And then so a lot of the follow through that I think it did in trust, because then I'd go to school and we'd have morning chores that everyone had their morning chores for that day, and I was always vacuum for some reason. That was just always mine. And so the follow through of my environment was at school. So to me, there was no other way. That just was how I was sort of mentored into living a normal, like, environment life. So you go to school and you say hi to everyone in the classroom. You don't just say hi to one person. We went around and said hi to everyone. We had morning mat. There was this dance, like song dance we used to do every morning in stage 2. And I just remember it was something about bags, and we'd do it every morning. We'd say hello to each other every morning. And so then I'd come home and mom would say, well, what did you learn today? And nothing was not ever an answer. So mom still asks me now when I'm in university.
It's interesting because when our son graduated from university, one of the deans there said 95% of students that go ahead and get a degree of some sort, they've had an adult in their life ask them that question, what did you learn today? So to me, that was standard. They jump in the car and say, hey, what did you learn today? And I would ask the same question to my nieces and nephews, and 9 out of 10 times you get the nothing. I said, so you learned absolutely nothing. You were staring at the wall for 6 hours straight. And then they'd giggle and say, oh, yeah, we did some math and we did. So I realized it had to be fun. So bed making was fun, right? So
that was homework.
That was and
that was our version of homework. Unlike the other systems that teachers, outsource the education to the parents at night for homework. Our homework, and we learned that Montessori homework was home chores that the parents are responsible for, not the teachers. And it's got nothing to do with the education or the pedagogy, right?
We never called them chores.
No, we didn't.
It was
your service.
10-second tidy. I don't care what you do, enjoy it, but we need, before dad comes, 10-second tidy. Dad's going to come.
So Marie Rose, was there a point where you realized that your parents were different to normal other parents? You had hit the jackpot?
Probably when I realized that other people's parents don't have to do form work, or because I got my mom, like my brother and I, we're 5 years apart, right? So every stage I was in, I was just missing my brother, which means my mum and dad were doing some form of weird, exciting creation between the two of us. So whether that was Halloween events when I was still in stage 3, or my brother asking mum to help do a spit at a medieval night we had at the school, my parents were always just very involved. So when I would talk to my friends or my cousins about what their parents do with their school, they dropped them off and they picked them up sometimes, and then public transport became that. Whereas my parents, I don't remember going to school without my parents being there somehow, whether it was, so I think now I'm much more appreciative of just what level of involvement they were and how different they were, because I'm about to turn 23, so you get that adult perspective a bit. And now you look at I realized my parents were different when I saw how much effort my brother and I put into people and things, because that's how we were normalized to do. Putting in effort in your environment and your community is very normal, because that's how we saw our parents do that. And so being a part of our environment was probably the biggest thing I saw was different. Shouldn't be different. It should be a norm, but just being involved.
So, Peter in Zambia, what have you least loved about being a Montessori parent? Is there what's the biggest challenge, do you think, about being a Montessori parent?
External noise, especially when you have adults that have got an educational background, a traditional educational background, where they will sit you down and tell you, are you really sure? Because, oh my God, they're going to have to sit through exams and they have to sit through. And I said, yeah, I understand that.
Capable to be tested.
They almost saw Montessori as a deficit. And I thought, wow, I've never put my child in a box. I'm left of center, I am, as a personality. So why would I do that to my kids? Alexi, our son, has never heard a school bell. He's never worn a uniform. He's never been in a traditional classroom.
Or a period.
Have period. Oh, they did. So
he went the whole thing.
He actually,
Cater.
Alex was lucky. He went from stage 1 to graduating, doing his HSC. He's never seen a classroom. And
he survived in the real world. He actually made it, and he continues to make it.
Yeah, we're talking about a kid that's pretty dyslexic and sat through a university degree, did not fail one subject. Moved on, started his own business, and I'm watching him as an adult in his work environment and talking to his peers and his seniors. The one thing I always get about Alexi just solves the problem. It's as simple as that. Our goal as parents was not. Yeah, absolutely. Our goal as parents was not to create these, I don't know, ducks of this. And that's great if you do it. That's fantastic. But for us, we just wanted them to be a better version of us, just a little bit better than us, and be able to teach what they've learned. And I say to them, we've only done this parenting thing once. This is not like our second go. We've only lived this life once. So if we've made any mistakes that you feel uncomfortable with, throw them away and take the good stuff. And in anything in life, Montessori, take the good stuff, throw the bad stuff away. Don't harp on it. It just is. You're meant to live through it. You're meant to experience it. We love the fact that we could enhance our culture within the Montessori environment. And that was really important to us. So Montessori was just a comfortable place to be as they were growing into their personalities. And now, of course, they're unique human beings, 2 children in exactly the same environment, completely different personalities, raised by the same parents. But the constant was Montessori. So
which they're applying every day in their personal lives and their professional lives.
Yeah. Well, Alexi's success, despite his challenges, is a real testament to you as parents, and also, I guess, Montessori. Marie Rose, what was it like for you to transition to traditional school education?
I didn't have any struggles.
And when did you confident she was going to make it?
Yeah, I didn't have any struggles at all, because the comparison was I was leaving to go to public school, high school, the same year my brother graduated HSC. So my parents really didn't know what was happening, and neither did we. We were like, well, we'll just see what happens. We didn't do like a full saga tragedy breakdown of what's going to happen. It was just sort of like, all right, well, here's your uniform. You start on Monday. Let's see what happens. It's an experiment. And I was fine. like I walked into school. The only thing I got in trouble for, I moved into year 8 in public school. I did year 7 in Montessori, so I did 1 year of a high school in Montessori. The only thing that ever got me was having to ask to go to the bathroom in high school. That really struck me. I got detention my first day because of it, and having to wear a uniform was a big thing, but more so because I was like, oh, well, that's a bit boring. Like, what if I wanted to...
How did you get detention for wanting to go to the bathroom?
Because I finished my classwork and the teacher wasn't, I don't want to say wasn't paying attention to us because it's a bit, but I just thought, you know, I'm used to when you finish your classwork, you know, you go to the, like, if you need to do something, you get it, come back. The teacher wasn't paying attention to me, and I tried to say something. I was like, oh, I just went to the bathroom. And when I came back, they were like, where do you think you're going? And I was like, oh, I just went to the bathroom. I finished all my classwork. And they went, and they gave me detention, didn't really give me an explanation why. I was a bit confused. I just sort of sat there, waited, and then they explained to me, you have to ask me permission first, and you can't go in the last 15 minutes of class, and you can't go in the first 15 minutes of class, and you need to go to the office. Once you're in the office, you need to sign into the bathroom book. You have to get a key. Wow. The key has to go with you, has to come back. You have to sign out with the timestamp and then get a note from the office. So you actually went to the office and take it. I swear that was actually a thing.
Do you remember the time? Actually, the principal called me in one day in her school, and he said, oh, I need to talk to you about Mary-Rose. And I thought, oh God, what'd she do? And he said, we're just a little bit concerned that she's not fitting in, because during lunch, she comes into the office asking whether she can help the staff. And I said to her, and I said to him, what do you mean she's not fitting in? He goes, we've never had a student ask to help the staff. And I said, you do understand she came from a Montessori school. Photocopying and doing work and helping out is the community's part of their learning. And a lot of the time, Marie-Rose would get in trouble because she had questions. Like, she didn't have to raise her hand. She was just, but so encouraging discussion was not encouraged in a public school. And I had to literally sit her down and say, Marie-Rose, you're just going to be a bit of an observer as opposed to a participant. And she looked at me, she goes, well, what's the point in doing that and learning? Okay. So she thrived at university. So when she went to uni, she was great in the group discussions, and so it makes a difference. The hardest thing with her being a Montessori child, is a lot of adults would think that she was being a brat because she would just come into the conversation and say her bit, which I loved. But
what was it like hearing a school bell and having your daily life?
I ducked on orientation day because to be fair, the school that I went to straight from Montessori had a real old school alarm bell. So we went orientation day and we were in the library, and I ducked because I wasn't used to that level of intense. It was like a siren. And I went, is this happening every day? Like, what's and they're like, yeah, it happens every 45 minutes. I went, okay, that's different. Like, I was used to the bell, like a little hand bell that we had at Montessori, and it sounded, nice. But school bells were definitely something I had to get used to. I felt like I was constantly getting drilled behind my ear every class. But
yeah. So Zambia, before you said that you think Montessori suits every child, but not every parent. Absolutely. What kind of parent do you think Montessori is not suited for?
The parent that thinks that they're going to go in there and slowly change Montessori
to suit their mindset.
And a lot of the time, it could be just the people that I was exposed to, but a lot of them, when they've got a background in education, traditional education, hands on your head, that kind of stuff. And I felt for them because they really loved Montessori. They just didn't know how to adapt to Montessori because of their training and their background. So they were always on top of their children with, well, they don't give you homework, but I'll give you homework, so it'll be okay. So, or the parent that thinks that Montessori is just a daycare or something to do before real school. And I used to hear that all the time. I didn't even know if my kids could read. It wasn't an issue for me. My issue was, are they learning? Are they loving school? Are they turning up with a smile? Do they sleep at night? Are they stressless? Because my nieces and nephews had a pile of homework. The parents were on top of them. Half the time, the parents would do the homework for them because they had deadlines. They were constantly under pressure because if I've got this exam, I'm going to fail this exam. What happened? I just saw so much stress, and it's unnecessary. Life is stressful anyway, but as you grow and you become an adult, you deal with stresses very differently than you would as a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old. And they felt safe. And that was very important to me, that the kids felt safe in their environment.
Can I add a couple of things onto what parents it's not for from our experience, from primary, and then also, because that will also lead to, how we can improve. Parents that are not prepared to surrender their own belief system of what good education is, to decouple their own belief system because they went through it or because that's mainstream. If the parents can't let go of that and have faith, that's a no-starter. And I saw it over and over. And in fact, we held a line when I think Zambia said certain noise tried to put doubts in our minds whether the system was right for their kids, yet we were steadfast. So parents that also want to constantly challenge and have no faith, like they haven't bought into why, as opposed to the what and the how, why Montessori is important to an early childhood education all the way through their primary school years and all the way into their adolescent years, right? Because we bought into the early childhood piece. It was only until later that we had the opportunity, especially I at a council level, to manifest a high school in Sydney. So that was a great avenue for our eldest to continue their Montessori journey, which not every kid in primary has. So parents that were constantly doubting, constantly challenging, or constantly not prepared to that's the parent that probably is hard to change their mindset. So
or the parent that treats Montessori as a daycare.
That's the other one.
Stage one, it's just daycare and they'll go to normal school.
Till 5 years old, and then we'll take them to a real school at
we actually, our GP, our doctor, I think they're a day apart with Alexi. He was born a day after Ainsley was, after Alexi. And I was explaining to George that, they're going to Montessori schools, and he actually put his child in the same Montessori school. But then he got caught up, being a doctor, he got caught up with a whole, but they don't have exams and they don't have, so he took him to mainstream sort of, private schooling. Elite private. And I still talk to George and he goes, one thing my son always says to me, I wish you hadn't pulled me out of Montessori. He still says that, and he's a 28-year-old man. Yeah. But he started Montessori
same with Alexi, one day apart.
Yeah. And that's one thing, and I find it interesting that George, our GP, still talks about it. The one thing my son always harps on is, why did you pull me out of Montessori?
I miss that much.
And he's a highly intelligent kid. Scholastically, he's up in the, top 5%. It's not about that.
But he didn't understand.
But he didn't love school.
The process.
He didn't love the process. And he
How much Montessori did he get? How many years was he?
I think he's up to stage 3. Halfway through. Yeah, I think
he did.
Yeah, halfway to
he went to about 12.
Yeah.
He then segued into a normal high school, or maybe he did year 6 in a
I'm not sure. I can't remember.
But it was a prestigious one. But yeah, the parents both couldn't unblock their belief system that. And the other one is Montessori is only good for primary, but if they stay, they can't really adapt to the high school and all the pressure and all that. Yet I think the Montessori kids that have come out of primary school teaching are the best adapted to, and our daughter is a classic example, an elite sports high as well as a conventional high. So
the best argument I've heard to that counter argument against Montessori is, if you knew a famine was coming, would you go on a diet?
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly right.
Right. So if you know stress is coming in later life, why start it earlier? Like how does that help?
Exactly
Anyway,
right. We actually had a
Do you-
situation within our family where
Mm.
a family member literally came to our house crying, saying, my child just left the house and we don't know where he is.
Teenager.
Because he could not deal with the pressures of homework. And it was just a barrage Sunday night trying to cram all the homework for Monday. And I actually saw the distress and the impact it had in the family, because this young man knew he had to finish school. He just loathed it. He actually he said to me, if I could never, ever go to school ever in my life, I would stop right now. So he came into the Montessori environment, and he came from a very strict, Catholic,
high school, elite high school,
and came to a Montessori environment, and within 6 months he was smiling again, because the pressures of homework weren't there. Not that they didn't do work. A lot of the times school would finish technically, 3:30 normal school. I never used to leave Montessori before 5:30 because
the kids wanted to stay.
Marie Rose wanted to be part of Maria's market, and Alexi wanted to feed the goat, and I don't know.
We had a goat.
And it was, I remember they were learning about the Anzacs, and they had to dig. They literally dug a trench. The teacher sat down with them and said, this is how big the trenches were. Go through the history books. They literally, the kids dug a proper Anzac trench and sat in it for hours on end. So it's not about just regurgitating information and passing an exam. It's about living what you learn. And that's a big thing. And one thing I did do, I always explained to the kids why things work the way they do. So it wasn't make your bed because I said so. It's make your bed because if your room is clean and neat, and you live in a neat and clean environment, then your mind will reflect that. So it made sense. So there was never talking down to the kids. Yes, I ruled with an iron fist. I didn't allow kids to railroad me. But at the same time, they were allowed to be themselves and function within our family and the schooling environment. So we're lucky. We've had a positive experience with Montessori.
I think Mark's been bumped out, Liz. I'm not too sure why.
I know we've lost our compare.
I think we're gonna.
Well, until we get Mark back, just to extend on what Zam said, we tried to extend Montessori to the house as best we can, so that we didn't undo what they were learning. And advice for educators, and our advice to you as educators or administrators is, the more in the way you recruit or vet parents, the why question is very important when they start a child's journey, and at all sections why they're doing it. It saves a lot of disappointment or misunderstandings.
There's a question here, says, did your children face any unusual challenges because of Montessori education? And I don't think they were challenged. I think they challenged others. And that was a challenge in itself. Because they would say, well, why do I have to wear a uniform? I don't want to. And it's interesting when you have a little human look at an adult and say, but why do I have to wear a uniform? So their inquisitiveness was challenging sometimes, because I encouraged that. I never stopped that. I never said, look, some people don't. I said, Morose, this is your life, and this is how you live your life, and this is the way your brother lives his life. And if you're happy and you want to talk about it, you do. And they still have got that inquisitiveness about them. I think most Montessori kids have that.
I look at that question, and I also think about both children. What unusual challenges people were trying to put into our minds that they may face in their journey, whether that's as a going from a young child into primary school, and then the next big thing is when you go from primary to high school, and then when you go from high school to university, or from high school to life, both in their personal lives and in their educational lives. You know, I look for Mary Rose. She made those changes and adapting without a lot of distress. And in fact, university life was so much like Montessori life that she said, nobody tells you what to do. It's up to you to be self-directed, whereas high school and primary school in the conventional ways, you are directed. You have to conform. You have to align with the rigid structures of class and time and what you can and cannot do. Whereas university or higher education, guess what? You don't want to turn up to the shoot or the lecture. It's up to you. You miss out. But if there's help, it'll be there, and you learn. And in fact, Mary Rose was in university during the COVID time, so she had the discomfort of remote learning and being locked down. But what happened? Her community skills really came to the fore, even if it is over video. And then when it was on campus, she blossomed even further because she brought to the table a lot of behaviours that helped others. And it was inherent behaviour. It wasn't, obviously learnt and honed over years.
Yeah, Montessori is different in the sense where you get taught to work around your situation. You don't have to. Your situation doesn't work around you. Your situation is going to be what it's going to be. It's your decision whether you're going to see it with a positive light, or you're going to see it as the end of the world, and how you're going to work with it. If it doesn't work for you, but that is unfortunately how it's supposed to be, how are you going to mold it, basically? So when I was in high school, I didn't understand the concept that everyone has to have the same answer, because that to me didn't make sense, because no one is going to have the same answer. So that was really frustrating. And then I got to uni and they went, well, I'm in a very human-centric, I did an undergraduate in psychology and I'm on my postgraduates in psychology, which I think it's a bit poetic because psychology is the only medicine/science that doesn't have a rigid answering system. It actually has to be individualistic. So for me, it was easy. I went, okay, makes so much sense again. And I'm actually having to analyze things in my perspective, not what the textbook says. I can analyze things how I would adapt it. And I saw an astronomical difference between my HSC mark, which everyone freaks out about for about 6 years of high school, and going to uni, and I saw a total difference. And I never got one participation mark under 100 in all of my uni, because it was one thing me and my friends differed in marks. I went to every tute, or I didn't be the first one to ask a question or be a bit left of center. And every time they'd ask me, I've been pulled back at uni multiple times just to have a conversation with my tutors.
You're curious.
And they'd ask me, where did you come up with that? And it always goes back to the Montessori conversation. And I was raised in a Montessori environment, so the way I think is just a little bit different. And it always becomes a conversation at uni or between other people I'm at university with, especially in a lot of my developmental psychology subjects where we're talking about children's development and all learning types. And that really was something big that I saw that I'd come home and tell my parents about, was being an adult. Montessori adapts you to become an adult. That's the whole point of it. Absolutely. It teaches you how to be an adult. And before you are, basically. Like a lot of the things that I was taught in a Montessori environment, I use now. So I don't think there are any challenges. It's a perspective thing. Challenges don't exist. It's a perspective thing. And I think that's what Montessori teaches you. You either see it as a negative, you're going to see it as a new opportunity to have a new lesson and turn it into something.
I always just say to the kids, life is like Lego. It's a bit like Montessori equipment. You have them there on your mat and you need to solve the problem. You just need to solve the problem
with
what's available to you. And it doesn't matter whether it's uncomfortable. Life will challenge you. You will be in an uncomfortable environment. It's how you go through it and the lessons you get from that. And have you become a better person through that challenge? So Marie Rose went from a Montessori school to a public sports high school where she was the only female playing baseball in a men's baseball team, and these guys were strong. And Marie Rose said to me, I'm really angry because they don't even want to give me a uniform. And I said, why is that? She goes, I have no idea. And then we realized the politics of, her being a female. She lived through that at a very young age. So, when you've got a competitive spirit, it'll come out. It'll come out where you don't expect it. And life itself brought that forward. And I said, well, what are you going to do, Maris? You can't quit. You're not a quitter. She goes, no, I'm not going to quit. I'm just going to hit the ball 10 times harder because now I really have to prove myself. So, Montessori teaches children to become adults before life forces them to be an adult. And as a parent watching them be adults now, I can sit back and say, okay, they probably will be okay with challenges in life. We're always there to support them, but we don't have to handhold them.
We made the right decision.
Peter and Zambia, do you have any advice for educators in how to deal with parents?
Parents that are inquisitive or parents that are combative?
Both.
Both. The combative parent, I would sit back and say, you know what? All you need is to learn more about what Montessori really is. It's not controlled chaos. That little piece of equipment that they're playing with, they're learning mathematics. They just don't know they're doing it. So they need to learn. They need to read books. I think the first year, we probably bought about, 30 books.
Everything that Maria Montessori had published. And third parties that published.
I think we're talking about, is it Montessori Magic now? I think it was called Montessori Madness back in the day.
About 12 years ago.
So, and I'm a audio and visual learner. So I watch that book take place in the classroom. I would go a bit earlier and peek through the window and just watch how the teachers would sort of navigate through the room. Whereas Peter's a reader, so he would go like page after page after page.
I have to understand the planes of development.
And Peter goes, do you know this and the pink tower? And yeah, I've seen them do that. It's fun.
But what's the book you think all parents should read?
I think it's been updated. We've got Montessori Magic, which is the book for parents from one parent. It's written by a parent, and that's the latest. We had the earlier one, which was published nearly a decade ago, and
Trevor Eisler's book. Yeah,
yes,
Montessori Australia's just updated that, and we call it Montessori Magic now.
It's fantastic.
I never understood why he called it madness, and I asked him, and he said, yeah, it was probably a mistake.
Yeah, I had a few copies that I gave out to parents that were doubtful or close family. And I said, once you read this, you'll get the
great
perspective, not the teachers or the administrators or the Montessori, institutions. This is, and Trevor does a great job. I know he had the American view in the book around all the issues that children, I think Mary Rose talked about it, permission to move, permission to do that, and all the things that he compared it to his children's observation of the Montessori.
I was lucky as a parent to be exposed to teachers that actually loved their job. So they didn't mind hanging around at the door for an extra 5-10 minutes and answer my questions. And sometimes I might have a real simple question like, something silly, but sometimes some of the questions it made a difference to how I parented at home. And you never know which question is more important than the other. So as an educator, if you can somehow, and I know you're busy, I get it, I know how much work you do, but if somehow you can talk to the parents, even it's at the door for 5 minutes and say, hey, have you got any questions? Has anything popped up that you can give me feedback? Sometimes when you ask the parents for feedback, it encourages conversation, and then if you need to say something that they need to hear, you can do it without having that, antagonistic, because you've got different temperaments, right? Some people take offense. Other people love the fact that the teacher's telling them what to do. It's like, great. You've had 10 years of study to, go through your craft. And that one question that takes 1 minute for you to answer can solve a whole lot of problems and answer a whole lot of questions. So I understand as a Montessori teacher, you've got a lot on your plate. It's not easy. It's not, it's not the, bell, done, homework, tick, tick, and then we start the next day. It's not like that at all. So we do appreciate what you do. And that's years.
Right.
We appreciate it. It's been fantastic for us.
It is a very stressful job being a Montessori teacher, I have to say.
Absolutely.
What do you think? The next question really is, so if it's such a good idea, if Montessori education is so great, why aren't there enough Montessori schools around? Why aren't there more? Montessori really only serves 0.001% of children in this country, and only 0.5% of schools in Australia are Montessori. It's been around for over a century. The first Montessori school in Australia was a public school in Sydney, Blackfriars, opened I think in 1913. Why aren't there Montessori schools on every corner?
Yeah, even when I was involved for nearly 12 years, from Alexi starting till he graduated and then Mary Rose,
I think it's expensive. It's expensive. It's expensive to start a Montessori school.
It is, to start a school, to get it off the ground, whether it's K to 6 or beyond. Our experience with 2 schools, it's expensive to get off the ground and to
Find the right staff.
Find the right accredited, trained staff. So the director or directress and the assistants are there to support the demand as you generate demand, because no use generating excitement and awareness if you can't fill the schools. And there is a good size. We don't want big schools, according to Montessori. There is a right size, a lot of smaller schools, so it can be the right ratio of directress to the teacher. We don't want to be like the public system, which fails because you've got 40 kids in a room in 45 minutes. So I thought the momentum was going to grow over the last decade or so. But regardless of that, I think we need good supply of affordable teaching at the right levels. We need to have better, awareness and marketing to the elites in government around the system. And I think it's going to flourish when it gets into a non-private method, right? It's got to get into the public system. And I know there's some great case studies, even when I was involved in India and in Southeast Asia, they really embraced it. And it became the mainstream system in a lot of these countries that wanted to get an advantage over the West, right? And Montessori was there. I remember attending a number of conferences where Montessori was embraced by even some sister schools that came to us to see some of the work we did from Thailand or from India around how we planned and executed the development of the high school for adolescent education to complement the early childhood and primary education. So why hasn't that flourished to a broader accessibility? I'm disappointed.
I think it's also people don't even know what they're missing out.
Yeah.
A family member said to me that this new school that my kids are going to, it's boutique, it's small. Oh, they've got a garden patch, and you didn't realize they're yearning for Montessori. They just don't know it.
They don't know the brand.
And I sort of went, they've got a garden patch, and I'm thinking back, Marie Rose being, 7 years old, was running Maria's Market and selling eggs to everybody, and it's actually sad because people don't know. Our system is so old, it's outdated.
Nice.
And unfortunately, people don't know that there's another way.
Proven. With
A
results.
proven method. And even with Montessori, we need to change, we need to shift, because technology did not exist when I didn't have to face that as an issue. Social media was not an issue for us. I think the kids had a big desktop and they used it for research.
But our grandchildren or the kids down the street, I work at a creche now, and I see the electronic nannies. They're everywhere. They're on the pram, they're clipped on, there's an iPad.
and every kid is just staring into a screen, something we didn't have to face. So I don't know how that fits into the Montessori system, and do
you think there are there areas where Montessori needs to be updated to better fit the modern world?
Yeah. Social media, I think, whether we like it or not, is here. It is. I mean, AI is here.
More technology.
Like technology in general.
Adapting technology to
immersing it into the curriculum in a sensible way. I don't know who at the core of it is thinking through that, because I am in the IT industry, have lived with it for 40 years, seen all these paradigms change in my life, and the rate of advancement over the last decade has been more than the first 20, 30 years of my career. So the ability for the young minds to now adapt to the connections that are available has to be immersed into the pedagogy, into the curriculum. Just, no, we only do things in analog. Well, you've got to prepare the children for being adults in a digital world in a safe way.
I think that's a really good point. And Maria Montessori was using 16mm film when it was a brand new technology. So I've got to believe that she would be all over digital technology if she were alive today. But what about, you mentioned AI? What about, like, I know there's some excitement in traditional education circles about AI because it promises to allow for individualization. Like that's something that we haven't had the human resources to make happen in traditional education, right? To give every student the individualized attention that they need and that they get in Montessori. So if we give every child an AI bot, wouldn't that solve the problem in traditional education? Potentially, as long as there's guardrails around. The one thing, because I'm in there, the one thing about AI is, it's going to, I did a subject, social implications of technology, back in the 80s. What are the social implications, education implications of AI? And what I've learned in the last 12 months since ChatGPT, the educators put their head in the sand initially. No, we're going to stop it. We're not going to let it in. That's a tsunami that you can't stop. So how do you immerse it into your education process so you get the benefits and create some guardrails around your teaching and your students? And I think that is where everybody needs to really think through how does it evolve in a way that enhances the student experience, the teaching experience, like everything. So we're in
Can I give a Montessori answer?
Yeah.
If I was a Montessori kid and I asked about AI, I can almost guarantee one of my teachers in stage 3 would have turned around and said, so what companies make AI? And I would have had to research which companies. And then I would have had to find the contact numbers for the relations person for that AI company. I would organize an email that I'd create. I've actually had to do this in stage 3.
She's done that.
They would have got me to say, well, how would you approach that conversation? And I would organize a meeting with one of the people, or I'd go and visit it with one of my teachers. They'd take me to the city and we would go as an excursion, and I'd probably interview that person and I'd create a whole presentation as my passion project, and I'd probably present it to the whole school of how AI can be implemented in a Montessori environment. And I'd probably find an IT person from that company to help me create some app or something.
Prototype.
That's just a Montessori environment. I think it's one of those, because I remember every question that I had as you get older, instead of the teacher giving you the answer, it was like, well, how are you going to find the answer? How are you going to do it on your own? So,
right. How we create problem solvers.
That's the Montessori answer, I guess.
Does anybody listening have a question for Zambia, Peter, or Marie Rose? Feel free to jump in if you'd like to.
Hopefully it's been fun.
My question would be, as teachers, do you find that the parents have changed in their approach to Montessori
in recent years?
Is the excitement still there from the parents?
What do you think, listeners?
Sorry, hello everyone.
Hi.
Hi, my name is Michelle, obviously, it's on the screen. And I work in early education. So I work in what we would obviously call a traditional early childhood centre. And about 10 years ago, I changed it to a Montessori philosophy, if you like. But that's my training as well. So to answer your question, I suppose, what do people think of how it's going and if they enjoy Montessori and things like that? Look, the parents that I have coming through our centre just adore it. And yeah, they adore it, and they've been to other early childhood centres and they think that this is just the bee's knees. And just to give you a little example, I had a little girl come back today. She's gone to a state school.
Yeah.
So she went there for prep and year one. She's now in year two. Now I haven't seen her for years, and she's a single child and only child, sorry. And her mother brought her in just to say hello to me. And I've got a little card here I'm going to show you that she brought in. She literally came in, and I don't know if you can see this, but it says, "To one of my best teachers."
Aww.
And then she says, "To Michelle, I love you so much. You are the best. Merry late Christmas. I wish I was still at your," and she says the name of it, lots of love in her name. And like that to me is just amazing. And so the mother brought her in to give some old books of hers. So it's that whole follow through, the courtesy, the grace, the respect.
Courtesy,
yeah, she looked after her books. She brought them into our childcare centre to gift them on. But the mother just had rave reviews, you know, from everything that I taught her, just to do with, you know, the golden beads and the bird's eye view and things like that. And that's all just brilliant with her school at the moment. So that's just one example. And your comment before about, sorry, I'm hogging the space, but your comment earlier about parents and the need to know, the need to be, they don't know what they don't know.
They don't know, that's right.
So for my job, my background is actually business and HR before I went into education. So I did that for 14 years, and that's what my 2 degrees were in, and teaching is my 3rd degree, and that was the Montessori. So my background is communication and business, and so it's really important from an educator's perspective, I'm sure everyone knows this, to educate the parents. So and that's what all my little newsletters do.
For your education, you're probably educating the next something.
Yes.
Next brain surgeon, the next anyone. You know, it's an important job. A lot of people go, "Oh, it's only a Montessori." No, it's not. If you look at like Taylor Swift and all these people that are very successful have got
early childhood education,
Montessori education,
found them,
and it's that inquisitiveness is really important.
Yeah, sorry.
I'd just like to thank you, Michelle. That sounded really great. But I was thinking that, you know, when you said about questions and answers, you always wanted the Montessori teacher just to have time to answer your questions. I heard just a little while ago that, you know, we think that we're educating parents when we give them parent ed evenings.
Yeah.
Sometimes that can be, it's telling people things rather than letting them ask the questions.
Yeah.
So this year, I hope to have an introduction, a pretty, you know, an induction to where you are, and then after that, have question and answers, so that you only have the time that you're answering all their questions.
Perfect.
That's
turn the tables on them.
Yeah. And that's I think that's what you were talking about, how important
the skill will be who's going to talk up, right? So the skill is to elicit conversation starters that will bring in the parents. Some of them will be worried that they haven't done the research and they haven't got the knowledge that they need to speak up and ask you questions.
Cara made a really good point as well. Sorry, I'm always checking the chat as well about the change of COVID in the landscape, and it is a big difference. Like, I was at a university level, like getting information at a university level, and saw how impactful COVID was on my education, let alone a child where a parent is much more involved because they have to be. Like a 5-year-old can't really do a lot with technology on their own. You sort of need an adult constantly there during COVID. So it makes sense how COVID would have been a very big change or shifter in the perspective of education. And
I think it's the readily available interactions that you would generally have pre-COVID. Like parents drop in, they stand around for 10-15 minutes, have a chin wag, how's your day, what you been up to? They go, they come back again a couple of hours later, pick up their child. We had these really beautiful relationships that weren't forced. They just were. And then COVID happened, and unfortunately we turned to this whole stop and drop model where the child was dropped to the front door because, you know, you couldn't get them parents coming into the service because of, you know, the fear of spreading the illness or whatever. And I think people just became really comfortable with that now. And I think that transaction is gone, that people are just busy. People are busy. You know, life is really, really tricky. And it really breaks my heart to observe parents now just swing in and swing out, and that conversation is just gone. And it's really sad, because I feel like, going back to what you both were saying before, Michelle and Susan, it's something to put a structured conversation in place or a forum in place. But I feel like those really natural conversations that happen on the fly are far more important, because that's when you really develop a connection with the parent.
Exactly right.
And it's not forced, and so you do get a better understanding of the child and their community and their families just through, you know, transactional conversations that happen in and out of the front door.
That's the glue that used to keep those school communities flowing. And in the corporate sense, what they used to call in the old days the water cooler conversation, or the conversation in the kitchen during lunch, they were more valuable to people being mentored early in their career than any training they did, right? And that's one of the things that we've seen in working remote or learning remote, is not the technical stuff, not the hard learning. It's the actual nuances that you pick up, or the mentorship and coaching that you miss out on that human contact. Virtual is not a ready substitute. So you've got to mix it, you've got to blend it. And as Susan says, if they're too busy to even spend that, you know, end of school conversation, how are they going to make time in their evenings or after work to get them into that place to have that open forum conversation? So it's not going to be easy, but there's got to be a way. There's always a way. It's just got to be.
I remember when the kids were younger, a lot of the time where I would get involved is when they would do group activities like medieval night. So the parents had to get involved, and we knew about it 2 months in advance, so we be able to sort of put in our diaries and take time off and what have you. So by doing little things like that are fun, you can slowly attract the parent into that environment again, where they start, you know, hanging out, if you want to call it that. You know, we had medieval night. I took the kids. We went to the butcher. My son had a little. What was it? A little lamb and a little, and they had to put it on the spit. But, you know, if it wasn't for the high school teacher sitting down and saying, hey, let's make this happen. Plan the event. Or I think the kids were talking about, one of the teachers was from Canada.
America.
Yeah. So Halloween was a thing, and Thanksgiving. So all of a sudden, you know, I found myself building a Halloween
haunted
house
on the school grounds.
Yeah, we were building at the time, so I had a lot of stuff on our site. So I got my labourers to come in, and we built a haunted house with a
48-hour non-real structured but structurally safe.
It was structurally sound
haunted house, and still to this day, my Montessori friends still talk about, because it was a full maze.
And all the parents turned up.
We had black builder's plastic, and at the end, Marie Rose said to me, now we need someone to scare the kids, so that's your job, Mum. So I had blood all over my face and screamed my head off. At the end, she actually sat down and she did the math. We made about $2,500. How old were you?
It was my first year of stage 1, so I would have been stage 3, so I would have been 10.
10 years old. So
I gave another me having a curiosity, and my teacher went, well, how do you want to do it? And I went, well, sure. So the whole school got involved. Stage 1 were making paper bats that they were making little hats with, and stage 2 were making all the like novelty games. Stage 3 were doing all the financial side of things and budgeting everything, and the high schoolers were the helping laborers, and they were the costumes, and they were making sure monitoring who was coming into the school. We did it for 3 years. It was one of the best things we've ever done.
And if it's fun, the parents will get involved. They do. And of course, they're very busy. So if you can give them enough of a timeline and get the excitement, and usually excitement is infectious, and kids are infectious. When they're excited about something, they will not let go. It's like, Mummy, you have to help, but you have to, Mummy, but please take a day off and tell Daddy to come, and I'm going to tell my other friend because their daddy's going to come. And you think, oh God, how can I not participate?
Emotional blackmail.
Emotional blackmail. It works.
Well, on that note, we'd better bring it to a close. But Zambia, Peter, and Marie Rose, I want to thank you so much for sharing your experience. This was so great, and I'm sure we could talk for hours. But thanks again for coming on Montessori Lives.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for
your time.
Thank you, everybody, for coming along.
Bye.